At 43, Elizabeth Carter lost everything in a divorce that ended a 20-year marriage. The home she helped build, the life she once knew, gone almost overnight. All she had left was a single key she'd carried for 10 years and never used. She went back to the small house her parents left behind, a place she hadn't seen in over 10 years since the day they passed. What she found there wasn't wealth. It wasn't comfort. It was something far more meaningful, something that slowly began to bring her life back together. And as days turned into weeks, and strangers became something more, Elizabeth discovered that starting over doesn't always mean being alone. Before we begin, if stories like this one mean something to you, take a moment to subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. She was 43 years old when the lawyer slid the papers across the table, and she signed away 20 years with a pen that wasn't even hers. It was a good pen, heavy, expensive. She remembered thinking that, in the strange way the mind fixes on small things when the large thing is too large to hold. 20 years of marriage, reduced to a stack of paper and a signature and a pen she would never see again. She had built that marriage the way you build anything that matters. Slowly, with both hands, without keeping score. She had picked the paint colors. She had planted the garden. She had hosted the dinners, the holidays, the small ordinary Tuesdays that nobody remembers individually, but that add up, somehow, to a life. She had not seen it coming. That was the part people never believed when she tried to explain it later. Not the affair, not even the divorce itself. The part she could never explain was that she had not seen it coming. 20 years, and she had missed every sign. She moved out of the house on a Tuesday in March. Her sister Dana drove up from Springfield to help. They packed in near silence, the specific silence of two people who understand that talking will not help, and that the only useful thing left to do is fold the next box closed and carry it to the car. She kept almost nothing. Half of everything, technically. That was what the papers said. But she found, standing in the house she had lived in for 18 years, that she didn't want half of anything. She wanted none of it. She took her clothes. She took her books. She took a box of photographs that her husband, her former husband, she was already learning to say, had not bothered to claim. And she took, almost as an afterthought, a single key on a small brass ring that she had carried in a drawer for 10 years without once using it. The house was in Arkansas, in the Ozarks, on a gravel road called Persimmon Hollow, 12 miles outside a small town called Jasper, where her parents had lived their entire lives, and where she had grown up, and where she had not been, not once, in the 10 years since they died. Her father first, then her mother 8 months later, the way it sometimes happens with people who have been together so long that one cannot, in the end, figure out how to continue without the other. She had inherited the house. She had paid a property management company in Harrison to check on it twice a year. She had paid the taxes from an account she rarely looked at. She had not been able to go back. Not because the house held bad memories. The opposite. It held memories so good, so complete, that returning to them while everything else in her life was falling apart had felt, for 10 years, like more than she could survive. She drove there now, because she had nowhere else, and because, for the first time in 10 years, she understood that nowhere else was no longer a problem. It was an opening. The drive from Springfield took 3 hours, highway giving way to county road, giving way to gravel, the land folding into the soft green hills of the Ozarks, hills that didn't announce themselves the way mountains do, but simply rose, gradually, patiently, the way they had been rising for 300 million years. Persimmon Hollow Road followed a creek for the last 2 miles. She remembered this. Her body remembered it before her mind caught up. The particular curve where the road dipped close to the water. The old stone bridge her grandfather had helped build in the 1950s. The persimmon trees that gave the road its name, standing along the fence line exactly where they had always stood. The house appeared at the top of a rise. A simple white farmhouse, 2 stories, a wraparound porch, a tin roof, gone the soft silver gray of years without paint. The yard had grown wild. Her mother's flower beds, so carefully tended for 40 years, were now indistinguishable from the surrounding field, except for a few stubborn daffodils, still pushing up each spring, long after anyone had asked them to. She sat in the car for a long time. Then she got out, walked to the porch, and used the brass key for the first time in 10 years. The door opened easier than she expected. Inside, the air was still, dry, carrying the specific smell of a house that has been closed for a long time. Dust, old wood, and underneath it, faint but unmistakable, the smell of her mother's house. Lavender sachets, lemon oil on the furniture, something baked, ghostly now, but present. The furniture was still there, sheets draped over most of it, put there, she remembered, by the property manager 10 years ago, protecting things no one had asked her to protect, but had protected anyway. She walked through the downstairs slowly, pulling sheets back 1 room at a time. The sofa, her father's reading chair, the dining table where every holiday of her childhood had happened, the kitchen where her mother had stood at the same counter for 40 years, where the linoleum was worn thin in the specific spot where her mother's feet had stood, day after day, making dinner for a family that no longer existed in any of the forms it once had. She stood in that kitchen and cried, for the first time since the divorce. Not for her marriage, for her mother, for a kind of love she had not let herself remember, because remembering it made everything else feel even more like failure. She stayed that first night, sleeping in her childhood bedroom, in a bed too small for her now, under a quilt her grandmother had made that still, impossibly, smelled like home. She woke before dawn, to a silence so complete it had a texture. No traffic, no neighbors' televisions through shared walls, no husbands breathing in the next room, a sound, she realized. Lying there, she had stopped truly hearing years before she stopped hearing it for good. Just silence. And somewhere beyond the window, a single bird beginning the day. She lay in that bed and listened, and felt something she had not felt in longer than she could remember. Not happiness exactly, something quieter, something like permission. She spent the first week simply being in the house, opening windows, letting air move through rooms that had been sealed for a decade, sweeping floors, finding, in small, unexpected moments, the specific evidence of a life that had ended. A grocery list in her mother's handwriting still tucked in a kitchen drawer. Her father's reading glasses still on the side table, exactly where he had left them. The last time he had set them down without knowing it was the last time. On the 8th day, she went up to the attic. She had been avoiding it, not consciously, but she noticed, climbing the narrow stairs, that some part of her had been saving it, the way you save the hardest thing for last. The attic was full of boxes. Her parents had never thrown anything away, the particular habit of people who had grown up with very little and never lost the instinct to keep what might still be useful. She worked through the boxes slowly. old clothes, school papers, her own, going back to elementary school, every report card, every crayon drawing saved. Her father's tools wrapped carefully in oiled cloth. And then, near the back, behind a stack of boxes she almost didn't move, a small wooden trunk, not large, about the size of a hope chest. Locked. She did not have a key for it. She tried the brass key from the front door. It didn't fit. She searched the attic for another 20 minutes, finding nothing, and finally went downstairs and found, in the back of her father's old tool drawer in the kitchen, a small flat key, worn smooth, that she did not remember ever seeing before. It fit. The lock was stiff with age, but turned. She lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that had gone brittle and yellow with time, were letters. Dozens of them, tied in bundles with faded ribbon, organized, she realized as she looked closer, by year. The earliest bundle was dated 1968. The latest was dated just 3 months before her father died. She untied the first bundle carefully. The letters were between her parents, written during a period she had never known about, when her father had worked construction in Texas for 8 months before they were married, to save enough money for the wedding her mother wanted. She read the first letter, then the second. Then she sat down on the attic floor, surrounded by dust and afternoon light coming through the small round window, and read for 3 hours without stopping. Her parents had loved each other in a way she had always known abstractly, the way children know their parents love each other without ever really understanding what that meant. But these letters showed her something different. They showed her two young people, uncertain, hopeful, sometimes afraid, writing to each other across distance, not performing love, simply living inside it, awkwardly, honestly, completely. "I don't know how to tell you what I feel," her father had written in 1968, "except to say that every day away from you feels like a day I am not fully alive." "Come home soon," her mother had written back. "The house isn't a house without you in it." She read letter after letter, spanning decades, through her own birth, through hard years and easy ones, through illness and recovery, through every ordinary Tuesday that had quietly built a 43-year marriage, a marriage that had lasted twice as long as her own. In the final bundle, the one from 3 months before her father died, she found a letter addressed not to her mother, to her. "Elizabeth," it began, "if you are reading this, I am gone, and so, probably, is your mother, because I don't think either of us could survive long without the other, and we both knew it, and we made our peace with it years ago. I am writing this because there are things a father doesn't say out loud, even to a daughter he loves more than his own life. Your mother and I were not always certain. We were not always easy. We built this marriage the way people build a house in the Ozarks, slowly with what we had, fixing what broke, and choosing every single day to stay. I don't know what your life will look like when you read this. I hope it is full and happy. But if it isn't, if you find yourself in a hard season, the way every life eventually does, I want you to know something. This house has always known how to hold people through hard seasons. It held us. It will hold you if you let it. And so will this town. We were never alone here, Elizabeth, not once in 43 years. There is no such thing as alone on Persimmon Hollow Road. There are only people who haven't asked for help yet. Ask. I love you more than these letters could ever say. I love you the way I loved your mother. Completely, imperfectly, and without ever once regretting it. Dad. She sat on the attic floor for a long time after she finished reading. The afternoon light moved slowly across the wooden boards. Somewhere outside, a mourning dove called, the same low, patient sound she remembered from childhood summers. She thought about her own marriage, about 20 years that had ended, not because love hadn't been real, but because, somewhere along the way, she and her husband had stopped choosing each other, the way her parents had chosen each other, every single day for 43 years. She did not know, sitting in that attic, whether she would ever have that again, but she understood, for the first time since the divorce, that the absence of it was not the same as failure. It was just a hard season, and her father had told her exactly what to do in a hard season. Ask. The knock came 2 days later. She had not asked anyone for anything yet, but word travels in small towns, not through announcement, through conversation. The woman at the door was in her 60s, silver-haired, sturdy, holding a casserole dish with the easy confidence of someone who had made this exact walk to this exact door many times before. "You're Elizabeth," she said. Not a question. "I'm Marjorie. I was your mother's closest friend for 30 years. I live just down the hollow." She held out the dish. "I saw lights on. Figured you might not have groceries yet." Elizabeth stood in the doorway and felt something in her chest that she did not have a name for yet, but that she would come to recognize, over the following weeks, as the particular feeling of being expected, of belonging somewhere before you have done anything to earn it, simply because of who came before you. "Thank you," she said. "Would you like to come in?" Marjorie smiled, the smile of someone who had been waiting 10 years to be asked exactly that question. Marjorie was the first. She was not the last. A man named Otis, who had farmed the land adjoining her parents' property for 40 years, appeared the following week with a chainsaw, and spent a Saturday clearing the dead limbs from the old oak in the front yard, without being asked, and without accepting payment. "Your daddy helped me through 3 bad harvests," he said when she tried to pay him. "I'm not keeping score. Neither was he." A woman named Patsy, who ran the only diner in Jasper, started setting aside a slice of pie every Thursday, because, she explained, her mother used to come in every Thursday without fail for 30 years, and it didn't feel right for the Thursday pie to go to waste. Elizabeth began going into town, not because she needed anything specific, because she found, walking the single main street of Jasper, that people knew her name before she had told it to them, knew her parents, knew the house on Persimmon Hollow Road, remembered things about her childhood that she herself had forgotten. "You used to ride your bike down Main Street every summer," the woman at the hardware store told her. "Faster than your daddy liked." "I don't remember that," Elizabeth said. "I do," the woman said. "I remember everything about this town. That's what towns this small are for." She began working on the house in May. Not renovating, restoring. The distinction mattered to her, though she could not have explained exactly why, except that renovation implied the house was wrong, and restoration implied it was right, and simply needed care. Otis helped her repaint the porch. Marjorie helped her clear and replant her mother's flower beds, working from an old garden journal that Elizabeth found, fittingly, in the same kitchen drawer, where she had found the small flat key. A young man named Caleb, Marjorie's nephew, 26, recently back from working construction in Little Rock, spent 2 weekends repairing the porch steps, and mentioned, almost in passing, that he had been thinking about starting his own small contracting business, but hadn't had the right first project to prove himself. "This could be it," Elizabeth said. He looked at her, surprised, the way people look when someone takes a quiet hope seriously for the first time. "You'd trust me with that?" "My father trusted Otis with 3 bad harvests," she said. "I think I can trust you with a porch." Summer came to Persimmon Hollow Road the way summer comes to the Ozarks. Slowly, green deepening into green. Cicadas building their long afternoon chorus. The creek running lower but never dry, fed by springs that had run for longer than anyone could say. Elizabeth planted a garden, her mother's garden, following the journal. Tomatoes and beans and the specific variety of squash her mother had grown every year, for reasons Elizabeth never fully understood, except that it had always been there, and now, again, it was. She read more of the letters, a few at a time, savoring them the way you savor something you know is finite. She learned things about her parents she had never known, that her mother had once, before marriage, dreamed of becoming a teacher, and had set that dream aside, not with resentment, but with the particular clear-eyed practicality of a woman who chose, deliberately, what mattered most, that her father had been afraid, genuinely afraid before their wedding, not of marriage itself, but of being the kind of husband his own father had not been, that they had built, letter by letter, choice by choice, a marriage neither of them had been guaranteed, but had made anyway, through 43 years of choosing each other. Dana came to visit in July. She stood on the restored porch, freshly painted, flower beds blooming, and looked at her sister with an expression Elizabeth hadn't seen in years. "You look different," Dana said. "I am different," Elizabeth said. "Good different?" Elizabeth thought about the question, about the divorce, which still hurt, in the specific way that true endings hurt, about the letters in the attic, which she now read on Sunday afternoons, the way some people read scripture, about Marjorie's casseroles, and Otis's quiet generosity, and Caleb's careful porch repairs, and Patsy's Thursday pie. About a town that had been waiting, apparently, for 10 years to welcome her home, the moment she was ready to be welcomed. "Good different," she said. She did not go back to her old life. She had known it for weeks before she said it out loud, the way you know true things, quietly, before you're ready to speak them. She sold her half of the settlement house in Springfield. She gave notice on the apartment she had moved into after the divorce, the one she had never properly unpacked, as if some part of her had known it was never going to be permanent. She moved fully into the house on Persimmon Hollow Road, into her parents' bedroom, repainted now, but the same room, the same window facing east, the same morning light her mother had woken to for 40 years. She kept the trunk of letters at the foot of the bed. She added to it, slowly, letters of her own, not to anyone in particular, just observations, the way her father had once written observations about a life being lived, one season at a time. In September, Caleb finished the porch and asked somewhat shyly if she might know of other work in the area since the porch had turned out, he said, better than anything he'd done before. She did know of other work. She had begun noticing, walking through Jasper, the small ways the town itself needed care, the way the old house had needed care. Porches sagging, roofs aging, the particular slow erosion that happens to small towns when the young people leave and don't come back. She had money from the settlement, more than she needed for one house. She found herself, without quite planning it, helping Caleb start his contracting business properly. Not as charity, as investment, in a town that had already invested in her before she had done anything to deserve it. She was 43 years old when she lost a marriage. She was 44 when she stood on the porch of the house on Persimmon Hollow Road at the first frost of autumn, watching the persimmon trees along the fence line turn that particular deep orange that gave the road its name, and understood something her father had tried to tell her in a letter written 3 months before he died. There is no such thing as alone on Persimmon Hollow Road. There are only people who haven't asked for help yet. She had asked. The town had answered. Not because she was owed anything. Not because the world had decided to be kind to her, specifically after being unkind, but because that is what small towns do when someone comes home, and is brave enough to let herself be held. She had lost a marriage of 20 years. She had found, in its place, something her parents had spent 43 years building, without ever using those words for it. A house that knew how to hold people. A town that had never let her be alone, even when she thought she was. A trunk of letters that taught her love wasn't about never struggling. It was about choosing again and again to stay. She picked up her father's reading glasses, still sitting on the side table where he had left them. She did not put them away. Some things, she had learned, are not meant to be put away. They are meant to be kept exactly where they are, so that every time you pass them, you remember what it means to be loved completely, by people who chose you every single day, for as long as they had breath to choose. She was home. She had always been home. She had simply needed 10 years, and a hard season, and a small flat key to remember it.